Hey there guys, this is Cole. Welcome back to another movie review. Today we are finally wrapping up the Superman series of movie reviews, and I'm only now at the moment when it comes to the Superman stuff, I'm only reviewing the movies where he's the main character, the solo-led movies. I probably will review Batman vs. Superman in both versions of Justice League at some point, but I think I'll just save that more for a Batman review series. But today we are finally wrapping up this review series of movies with none other than Superman 2025, directed by James Gunn, the new Superman movie that just came out, and I rather liked this movie. Now, if you guys have been paying attention to my videos if you've been paying attention to my reviews, you would know that when it comes to the character Superman, I am a rather big fan of the character Superman. I think he's a rather awesome character. In fact, like I said, I own not a whole lot, but I have some Superman comic books. But when it comes to Superman in general, in terms of the movies, when it comes to the Superman movies, I love the first two Superman movies by Christopher Reeve, which Superman the movie from 1978 and Superman 2 those movies are regarded as some of the best superhero movies of all time by both critics and audiences, which I agree with. I know a lot of people don't like the third one. I like the third one for what it is. Again, is it a perfect movie? No, but I like the third one. The third Superman movie, Superman 3 from 1983 with Christopher Reeve. Superman 4, though, not a fan. And Superman Returns was meh. I like Man of Steel, and I thought this was pretty good. But like I said, I've always been a fan of the character, whether it would be the first three Christopher Reeve Superman movies from, the 1970s and 80s. Man of Steel I like. This movie I like, and, the Superman animated series from the 90s. But I've always liked the character. And so, how was Superman 2025 made? Well, in 2022, the DC Extended Universe was not doing well at the box office, which, if you guys know, the DC Extended Universe first began in 2013 with the movie Man of Steel, but then right after Man of Steel in 2016, we had the second movie, Batman vs. Superman, then we had the third movie, then we had Suicide Squad in 2016, and then in 2017, you had Wonder Woman. In 2017, there was Justice League. And then in 2018, there was Aquaman. And then in 2019, there was Shazam. And then in 2020, you had Birds of Prey. And then in 2021, you had in 2020, you had Wonder Woman 1984. Then you had Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which is the better between the two versions. And then, you also had the second Suicide Squad movie, The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and this movie. And then you had, after that, you had Black Adam and Shazam 2, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2. And most of the DC Extended Universe movies were not very well received movies by critics and audiences, and a lot of them bombed at the box office because Warner Bros. Definitely rushed DC. They definitely rushed at making a DC cinematic universe of movies. Like, for example, when you watch the movie Man of Steel and then right after you go to Batman vs. Superman, that would be like going from watching the very first Iron Man movie all the way up to the third Captain America movie, which is about 8 years in the timeline, definitely rushed. And I'm not a fan of Batman vs. Superman. That movie sucked. But again, I'm saving that for a Batman review series. But because DC was not doing well in 2022, it was officially announced in 2022, because of how successful the Marvel Cinematic Universe was and how critically acclaimed most of the movies were from the first Iron Man movie up to Avengers Endgame, because of how popular and successful those movies were, it was announced in 2022 that James Gunn was officially going to take over DC, and they were going to completely reboot the entire DC universe and start all over. And James Gunn said, instead of rushing everything like they did the first time, they are going to have a 10-year plan of movies, kind of like Iron Man did up to Avengers Infinity War, where they plan out all the movies and characters and, the phases of the MCU, but we're now doing that with DC, which I think that's a very smart idea. So anyways, how was Superman 2025 received? Well, when Superman 2025 was released on July 11th of 2025, it received positive reviews from both. When Superman was released on July 11th, 2025, it received positive reviews from critics and audiences, and it became a big box office hit. And more DC Universe movies are on the way. Now, as for my reaction to this movie, I rather liked this movie. Now, I'm not ready to say this is my favorite Superman movie because, my favorite is Superman 2 from 1981 starring Christopher Reeve. I still think that's the best Superman movie, but I thought that this was rather good too. But anyways, what is the plot to Superman 2025? So the plot of the movie is as follows. When Superman gets drawn into conflicts at home and aboard, his actions are questioned, giving tech to billionaire Lex Luthor, billionaire Lex Luthor the opportunity to get the Man of Steel out of the way for good. Will reporter Lois Lane and Superman's dog Krypto be able to help him before it's too late? So that's basically the simple plot synopsis to this movie, and again, I really liked this movie, and I think that this is a very this movie's got a really good cast. You got David Cornsweet as Superman / Clark Kent. You got Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. You got Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern / Guy Gardner. You got Isabel Merced as Hawkgirl, and you have Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen. And I think all the cast is really good in this movie, and I am going to discuss some stuff here, but I'm going to try to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible because I do encourage people to go check this movie out in theaters while it's, in theaters. But without further ado, let's get into the review. So the movie starts off with a prologue, and what I appreciate about this movie is that I appreciate that this movie is not just another origin story movie, Now look, don't get me wrong. I like a good origin story about a superhero in a movie as much as the next person, but Superman does not need another origin movie because Superman's origin story has been told so many times, whether it is the 1978 movie, Superman the Movie, starring Christopher Reeve. His origin story was told in the movie Man of Steel. It was told in the 1995 animated TV show, Superman the Animated Series. We also got his origin in, the Justice League cartoon. I think they gave him his origin in, that CW show, Superman and Lois, which I heard good things about that show, but I haven't seen it yet. So Superman's origin, it's been told, the story of where he came from, it's been shown and told to us, 5 times. So we don't need to see another origin story. So I do appreciate the fact that this movie's not just another origin story, and we can just jump straight into the action. And this movie takes place on Superman's 3rd year on Earth, where he's fighting bad guys. Again, I'm not getting too heavy in the spoilers, but without giving away too much what happens at the beginning of the movie theaters, the screen of the movie says Superman came to Earth Superman arrived on Earth from his home planet Krypton, which blew up 3 years ago, and today is the first day he lost his battle. And again, we're not shown it because, again, we don't need the origin story. Like, they just basically give us that little prologue, with words on the screen, and then we jump straight into the action, which I do appreciate that. And the action scenes are very well handled in this movie. Like, I thought the action scenes directed by James Gunn were rather good in this movie. And again, now I'm gonna say this right now. Anything that was in the trailer, anything that was shown in the trailer to this movie, I'm not gonna consider a spoiler. Like, if it was shown in the trailer, then that if it's something that was shown in the trailer, I don't really consider that a spoiler. But yeah, like I said, we jump straight into the action, and again, this was in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, but we are introduced to Superman's dog named Krypto. And Krypto I have always liked. For those who don't know, in the Superman comic books and the cartoon, he had like a big white dog with superpowers who on occasion would team up with him to fight bad guys. And Krypto was never in any of the previous live action Superman movies. So the fact that we finally get to see Krypto here made me very happy. And besides, you guys know me, I'm a dog person. I love dogs. So, that was nice to see in this movie. And I think James Gunn definitely, and another thing about this movie, David Cornsweet, I thought was a very good Superman. He definitely nailed the role. And I also like the way this movie's, I also like the color filter to this movie. I like how this movie is all bright. I like how this movie is all bright and colorful, like the Superman comic books, which, to be honest, that feeling for Superman has pretty much been lacking since the Christopher Reeve movies, and I'm glad that they finally brought that aesthetic back to Superman. And I also like the other characters in this movie too. Again, this was in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, but I liked the fact that we got to see the Guy Gardner version of Green Lantern, who in this movie is played by Nathan Fillion, who I do like as an actor. He was in the 2006 sci-fi movie Slither, which I do rather like that movie. He was also in the TV show Firefly, which, to be honest, I've only seen the first 2 episodes of that show, but it is good from what I've seen. And he also played one of the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, so it's cool to see that actor reunite with James Gunn in another movie, but play a different character. I thought that was rather cool. And another thing I appreciate about this movie, again, I'm not going to get too deep into spoilers. Now, again, I do like the action scenes in this movie, and again, this was in the trailer, so I don't consider it a spoiler, but there is a scene where Superman has to fight a giant monster the size of Godzilla. Like, I thought, because you guys know me, I'm a big Godzilla fan, I'm a big fan of kaiju monsters, and the fact that we got to see Superman fight a monster destroying a city, but the monster was the size of Godzilla, the fact that we got to see something like that, I think is rather cool, and I did rather like that fight scene in the movie. Also, another thing, without giving away too much spoilers, this movie does make a few minor changes here and there, although I would say for the most part, this does stick up close to the spirit of Superman. There is one very bold change early on in the movie that the comics didn't really do, but I honestly think that change, which again, I am not going to spoil what that change is. I think for the sake of this movie, I think that change works because, this certain change, which I'm not going to give away too much, it really makes you hate the bad guy Lex Luthor. Like, it really makes you want to see Superman take this guy down, for trying to ruin his reputation. I thought, yeah, this definitely added stakes to the movie for sure. And I thought that Nicholas Hoult gave a very good performance as Lex Luthor. And Nicholas Hoult, I often forget this, he actually played Beast in the 2011 superhero movie, X-Men First Class, but he was also Beast in X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix. So the fact that that actor plays a villain, I thought that was rather cool. And this version of Lex Luthor, I honestly thought was intimidating. Now, he's not my favorite on-screen actor to play Lex Luthor. I would still give that to Gene Hackman, but I still thought that, Lex Luthor played by Nicholas Hoult was rather good in the movie. I also liked this version of Lois Lane played by Rachel Brosnahan, which I'm not really all too familiar with this actress, but I thought she did a great job. I thought that Lois Lane and Superman / Clark Kent, I thought the two actors who played those characters, I thought they had really good chemistry with the movie, and their chemistry was believable. You bought the fact that they were friends. And I do think that the humor does work rather well in this movie. That's something that James Gunn is always good at delivering, and I think he does a great job with the humor in this movie. And I'm trying to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. I'm not gonna say too much of what happens, but I like the final battle between Lex Luthor and Superman, and there is a funny moment in that scene, but without giving it away, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, at the end of the day, Superman 2025 I thought was a rather good movie. This is honestly one of the better DC movies we've had in quite a while, and with the success and critical acclaim of this movie, I am very excited for the future of DC with this with the DC cinematic universe reboot that this movie started with. Well, okay, technically I gotta backtrack. So there is also gonna be TV shows, basically kind of like what Marvel did with the movies, where they make movies and TV shows a part of an interconnected universe. They're doing the same thing with this DC universe, and technically the 2024 adult animated show Creature Commandos, which I did like, that was technically the start to this new DC universe, but this movie is a continuation of that universe. Only difference is this movie's not animated, it's in live action. But yeah, at the end of the day, I rather liked Superman. I am definitely gonna pick this up when it's available on DVD, and I had a fun time with this movie. In fact, my mom and my girlfriend Natalie have not seen this movie yet, but they want to go see it, so I'm going to go take them to see it this August 3rd. But I saw this movie at an IMAX theater with my dad and my uncle, which was a rather cool experience, and we all liked the movie. So yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Superman 2025 a 9 out of 10. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review, and I'll see you guys later. And next up, I will finally be doing a ranking video of the live-action Superman movies. But until then, we'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.